The unexpected encounter. Ethan Cross sat in the pilot's chair of his small salvage ship, drifting quietly through the cold emptiness of space. His scanners picked up nothing unusual, just old debris from long-forgotten battles. It had been a slow week, and he needed a good find to pay off his docking fees. He sipped cold coffee, staring at the blinking radar, hoping for a miracle. Then it happened. A faint blip appeared on his screen, small, moving slowly, almost dead in space. He frowned, leaned closer, and tapped the console. The ship's computer ran a quick scan. Unidentified vessel detected. Status, damaged, the voice said, calm as ever. Ethan's pulse quickened. Damaged vessels meant salvage rights, and salvage rights meant money. He adjusted course and fired the thrusters, heading straight for the signal as his ship approached. The object came into view. It wasn't a ship, not exactly. It looked more like a sleek metallic pod, covered in strange curved markings that glowed faintly blue. Part of it was scorched, like it had been through an explosion. A thin trail of frozen gas drifted into space from a crack on its side. This isn't human tech, Ethan muttered under his breath. He knew alien designs when he saw them. Smooth edges, no visible bolts or seams, and those markings. They looked almost like writing, but from a language he'd never seen before. The pod spun slowly, and a small window rotated into view. His eyes widened. Inside, lying motionless, was a figure, a woman at least. She looked human-like, slender. Build, pale blue skin, long silver hair floating gently in zero gravity. But what caught his attention most was the glowing metal collar on her neck. It pulsed with light, like it was alive. Ethan's heart pounded. He knew the smart thing would be to report this. Wait for authorities and stay far away. But smart didn't pay bills. Besides, if she was alive, she could be in trouble, and something about her made it impossible to just leave. He extended the ship's docking clamps and pulled the pod into his cargo bay. The airlock cycled, hissing loudly. Ethan floated over, tools in hand, and opened the pod's hatch with a hiss of escaping gas. The alien woman lay there, eyes closed, chest rising and falling weakly. Her skin shimmered faintly in the light. The collar around her neck buzzed with an odd energy. Every time it pulsed, her face twitched in pain. Ethan crouched beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked softly. No answer, just a slow, shallow breath. His scanner beeped. The collar was the source of high-energy emissions. It was feeding on her body's life signs, draining her. Warnings flashed on the screen. Unknown tech. Potential hazard. Ethan hesitated. If he touched the collar, it could shock him, or worse. But if he didn't, she might not survive. He wasn't the kind of man who walked away when someone needed help. Taking a deep breath, he reached forward. His fingers brushed the smooth surface of the metal. It was warm, almost too warm. A sudden flash of light exploded in the air around them. The collar gave a sharp, high-pitched tone, and then click. The metal loosened before Ethan could react. It broke apart into tiny shards of glowing dust. The dust swirled upward, then vanished completely, leaving no trace. The woman gasped, her eyes snapping open. They were a deep, glowing violet, and they locked onto his instantly. For a moment, she just stared confused, breathing hard. Then her expression shifted to something between shock and disbelief. "You," she whispered, her voice soft but clear. "You removed it." Ethan started to speak, but she suddenly sat up, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. "You don't understand," she said quickly. "In my world, this act binds you to me." Her voice shook, not with fear, but with certainty. "You are my husband now." Ethan froze. The words didn't make sense. Marriage? Husband? He thought maybe it was a language error, some strange translation problem, but her eyes told him she meant every word. Before he could respond, his ship's alarms blared. The radar lit up with a massive incoming signal, a warship fast, armed, and heading straight for them. Leery as he would later learn her name, face turned pale. "They found me," she whispered. "Now they'll come for you too." Ethan had no idea what he had just gotten himself into. But one thing was certain, whatever was coming next, his life was never going to be the same again. Alien law revealed the warning sirens kept screaming inside Ethan's ship. Red lights flashed over the control panels. Outside, in the dark of space, a massive warship was closing the distance fast. Ethan shoved the pod's hatch fully open and helped the alien woman stand. Her legs were shaky, but her grip on his arm was firm. "We need to move now," she said, her voice urgent but controlled. Her eyes kept flicking toward the small cockpit window, where the enemy ship's silhouette grew larger by the second. Ethan pulled her toward the pilot's chair. "Listen, I don't know who you are or why someone's chasing you," he said, "but right now we're going to focus on not dying." She stopped and turned to face him. "You don't understand," she said, almost desperately. "You removed my collar." Ethan glanced back toward the cargo bay. "So?" "It was hurting you," he replied. Her violet eyes hardened. "That wasn't just a restraint, it was a marriage collar." He blinked, unsure if he'd heard her right. What now?" "In my culture," she explained quickly, "a marriage collar can only be removed by a chosen partner, by the one who will share life and honor. Until death." Her voice carried a strange mix of pride and sorrow. "By touching it and freeing me, you have declared yourself my husband." Ethan almost laughed, but stopped when he saw her expression. She wasn't joking. "You're serious?" he asked. Her gaze didn't waver. "My people's laws are ancient, and they are binding," she said. "And they are recognized by the Galactic Concord, meaning every allied world will treat us as married." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "This is insane," he muttered. "I didn't agree to anything." Her tone softened, but there was steel beneath her words. "Intent does not matter. The act is the vow. You took it, and now it is sealed." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "That warship chasing us, they will not just kill you, Ethan Cross. They will kill my husband." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "You know my name?" She hesitated. "I scanned your ship while I was restrained," she admitted. "I had to know who found me." Before Ethan could answer, the comm system crackled to life. A deep, cold voice filled the cabin. "Unknown human vessel. You are harboring royal property belonging to the House of Vale." The voice paused. "Surrender the fugitive now, or be destroyed." Ethan glanced at her sharply. "Royal property? Care to explain that?" She flinched, looking away. "I am Lyria Vale, Princess of the Illyrian Dominion," she said quietly. "The collar was meant to bind me to a political alliance I did not choose." Her fists clenched. "When I refused, they called it treason. My captors meant to force me into it, until you—" She stopped, her eyes meeting his again. "Until you made it impossible." Ethan's heart was pounding. He wasn't sure which part was worse, the fact she was royalty, or that he was now apparently her legal partner by alien law. And the enemy ship outside didn't sound like they were in the mood for diplomacy. The comm voice returned, louder now. "This is your final warning, human. Comply, or we will open fire." Ethan turned back to the controls. "Yeah, that's not happening," he muttered, with a sharp motion. He cut the comm channel and punched the thrusters. The ship roared forward, engines straining. Lyria held onto the seat beside him. "You can't outrun them in this vessel," she warned. "Not without my help." He shot her a skeptical glance. "Your help?" She reached into the folds of her torn clothing and pulled out a small crystalline device. "This is an Illyrian pulse core," she explained. "It can boost your engine output by 50%, but it will burn out in minutes." "Minutes might be all we need," Ethan said. She nodded and slid the device into a hidden slot beneath the main console. The ship shuddered as the engines roared louder, the stars outside stretching into long streaks of light. The warship on the radar began to fall behind, but not for long. "They will follow," Lyria said, her voice low. "They will never stop following until I am theirs again. Or dead." Ethan looked at her. "You said this marriage thing is recognized across the galaxy, right?" She nodded slowly, then maybe. We use that to our advantage, he said, her eyes narrowed. You're suggesting we pretend to honor the bond, so they can't touch us without breaking their own laws. Ethan gave a faint, grim smile. Something like that, but deep inside, he knew, pretending might not be the hardest part, surviving long enough to even try. That was the real challenge. The pursuit, the hum of the engines deepened as the pulse core fed raw power into Ethan's ship. The stars outstreaked by, but the radar still showed the warship massive, relentless, closing the gap again. It was like being chased by a shark through endless black water. They're not slowing down, Ethan said, gripping the controls tighter. Of course not, Lyria replied, her voice calm, but her eyes locked on the flashing screen. They're hunters. And now they see you as part of the prey. Ethan tried weaving between chunks of broken asteroid rock. The ship twisted left and right, scraping past spinning metal debris from some old battle. The warship followed effortlessly, its bulk cutting through the void like a blade. Beams of light flashed past Ethan's view, one striking the drifting rock and blasting it into glowing fragments. Shields holding at 60%, the ship's computer reported. That won't last, Lyria warned. She was already moving, her long silver hair floating in the low gravity. Her fingers danced across his console with expert precision, bringing up systems Ethan rarely touched. You've flown my ship for 5 minutes and you're already hacking it, Ethan muttered. She didn't look up. I am improving it, she said simply. Your human shields are too. Polite. A sudden jolt shook the ship as another beam hit the rear armor. The warning siren wailed. Ethan swore under his breath and pushed the throttle as far as it would go. Nearest safe harbor? He asked the computer. None within range. It replied. Lyria's hands froze for a moment. Then she glanced at him. There is one place, she said slowly. But you won't like it. Try me, Ethan said. Dodging another blast, her eyes flicked toward the viewport, toward the thickening asteroid field ahead. In there, she said. That's the Varkas belt. No sane pilot enters it. It's full of unstable rocks, frozen gas pockets, and creatures. Sounds fun, Ethan said, forcing a smirk. She stared at him like he was insane. Fun? It's suicide. Better than being vaporized, he replied, already steering toward it. The warship fired again, 2 bright bolts slicing past them, one close enough to make the hull glow. They plunged into the asteroid belt, dark shadows swallowed them as giant chunks of spinning rock passed within meters of the hull. Some were as big as cities, others small enough to slam into the ship unnoticed until it was too late. The warship followed, but slower now, its huge size made weaving between the asteroids harder. Ethan saw his chance and pushed deeper. That's it, Lyria said softly, almost to herself. Hide in the teeth of the beast for a moment. The warship's icon on the radar blinked out, lost behind the dense rock. Ethan exhaled. Think we lost them, he said. Lyria's eyes narrowed. Hunters do not give up, she said. They change tactics. Her words proved true seconds later. A smaller craft detached from the warship and shot into the belt after them. It was faster, built for chasing, and its weapons began cutting through the asteroids like paper. Ethan jerked the ship downward, narrowly avoiding a beam that vaporized a spinning boulder above them. Lyria steadied herself against the console. You can't outfly them forever, she said. But maybe we can trap them. Trap them. In this? Ethan asked, waving a hand toward the chaos of moving rock around them. Yes, she said, already pointing toward a massive asteroid ahead. That one, it's hollow. My people used it once as a hiding place during the border wars. How do you know it's still there? Ethan asked, her lips curved slightly. Because I put it there. They skimmed the surface of the asteroid, searching for a dark slit. Between jagged cliffs, the pursuing craft was still on them, its weapons cutting closer each time. There! Lyria shouted. A narrow opening appeared barely wider than Ethan's ship. He didn't hesitate. The ship tilted sideways, scraping the rock as they squeezed inside. The interior opened into a vast cavern, lit faintly by veins of glowing crystal. Ethan brought the ship to a hover, engines low, outside. The smaller hunter craft swept past the entrance, missing it completely. They waited in silence, the only sound their breathing and the faint hum of the systems. Lyria finally looked at him. "You fly like someone who has been hunted before," she said. Ethan smirked, but there was no humor in his eyes. "Maybe I have," he said. "Maybe that's why I'm still alive." For the first time, Lyria smiled, not a mocking one, but something almost real, and Ethan realized this was more than just a chase. It was the start of a war he hadn't signed up for, but couldn't walk away from. Secrets and distrust. The silence inside the hollow asteroid was thick. Ethan's ship floated in the cavern's still air, lit only by the faint blue glow of the crystal walls. The engines hummed quietly, running just enough to keep the lights on. Ethan leaned back in the pilot's chair, breathing out slowly. His hands still felt tight on the controls, even though they had been safe for several minutes. But safe didn't feel real, not yet. Lyria stood near the viewport, her violet eyes fixed on the jagged opening they had slipped through. She hadn't moved since they stopped. Every now and then, her gaze flicked upward, as if she could feel the hunter craft still circling somewhere outside. "They won't search forever," Ethan said, trying to sound confident. "They don't need forever," she replied quietly. "They only need one mistake." Ethan studied her for a moment. Even standing still, there was a tension in her body like a coiled spring. She was calm, but not relaxed, and there was something else. Something guarded in the way she avoided looking directly at him. "So," Ethan began, "you're a princess." It came out more like a question than a statement. Her lips pressed together before she spoke. "I was," she said finally. "In my people's eyes, I am no longer worthy of the title, because you ran away from a marriage you didn't want." Ethan guessed. Her gaze shifted to him, sharp and unblinking. That marriage was a trap. It was not just personal, it was political. If I had agreed, it would have given my enemies control over the throne. Ethan tilted his head. "And the collar?" Her voice tightened. "It was placed on me by those same enemies. In our law, once the collar is locked, it can only be removed by the chosen spouse. If the wrong person removes it, the bond is still valid. That's why they're chasing us, Ethan. In their eyes, you have stolen me from them." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "I didn't even know what I was doing," he said. "Doesn't matter," she replied. "The law doesn't care what you know. The act is enough." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Great. So I'm married to a princess I met an hour ago, and an entire empire wants me dead for it." "You are not just married," she corrected. "You are bound by a covenant recognized across dozens of star systems. You share my honor, my debts, and my enemies." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "That last part, enemies, mind telling me exactly how many we're talking about?" She hesitated, and in that hesitation, Ethan saw the answer was worse than he'd like. "Enough," she said at last. "Enough to make hiding impossible forever." He studied her face, trying to read what she wasn't saying. There was more he could feel it. "Lyria," he said slowly, "what aren't you telling me?" Her eyes flicked away. "There are things you don't need to know yet," she said. "It will only make you want to leave, and if you leave, you will die. They will find you, even at the edge of the galaxy." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're asking me to trust you. That's hard to do when you're hiding things from me." Her gaze snapped back to his. "And you? You think I don't see it?" "You are hiding things too, Ethan Cross." She stepped closer. "You fly like a smuggler, but your ship carries scars from battles you don't talk about. You dodge questions as easily as you dodge laser fire." For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt heavier than the asteroid's stillness. Finally, Ethan looked away. "Maybe we both have our secrets," he said. her tone softened. But only slightly. Then perhaps we should keep them until they matter. A faint ping from the radar broke the moment. Ethan's eyes went to the screen. The hunter craft had returned to the entrance of the cavern, its signal pulsing slowly. "They found us," he said. Lyria's voice was steady. "Then we either run again, or we fight." The trap Ethan's ship slipped free of the asteroid belt under full burn. The hunter craft didn't follow. They had pulled back, almost too easily. It made Ethan uneasy. "Predators didn't just give up. We're clear," he said, glancing at the radar. "No," Lyria replied flatly. "We're being herded." Her words lingered in his mind as he steered toward the nearest neutral zone, a sprawling trade station called Port Halver. It wasn't much to look at, just a cluster of docking rings and jagged towers spinning slowly in the dark. But it was one of the few places where different factions could meet without immediately shooting at each other. At least in theory. The docking clamps locked, and the airlock hissed open. Ethan and Lyria stepped into the station's main concourse, a wide corridor lit by flickering holoads. The air smelled faintly of machine oil and something fried. Merchants shouted prices, and travelers of a dozen species moved through the crowd. "Stay close," Ethan murmured. He led her toward a repair bay where he had a contact, a mechanic who owed him favors. They hadn't gone 20 steps before Ethan felt it. Eyes on them, not just one pair, several, too many. He slowed his pace without making it obvious. Lyria noticed instantly. "They're here," she whispered. Her hand drifted toward a thin blade strapped to her thigh, hidden under her cloak. They turned down a narrow side passage, the noise of the crowd fading behind them. That's when the first figure stepped into view, tall, armored head to toe, with a visor that reflected the station lights, a bounty hunter. The emblem on his shoulder, a black serpent coiled around a sun, marked him as one of the Dominion's hired trackers. Two more stepped out behind them, cutting off the way back. Ethan's hand went to the small blaster at his side. "Looks like we're popular," he said under his breath. The lead hunter's voice was cold and metallic through his helmet. "Surrender the fugitive human. You will be allowed to leave alive." Ethan's laugh was short and bitter. "Yeah, I've heard that before. Never works out the way you promise." The first shot came fast. Ethan didn't see who fired, but a bolt of blue energy slammed into the wall beside him. The corridor exploded into chaos. Lyria moved like lightning, her blade flashing in the dim light. She slashed through the air, catching one hunter's weapon arm and twisting it until the blaster clattered to the floor. Ethan ducked behind a support beam, firing 2 quick shots. One hit a hunter's shoulder plate, spinning him sideways. Another ricocheted off a wall and into a lighting panel, plunging part of the corridor into shadow. A heavy blow slammed into Ethan's side. Another bounty hunter had gotten close. The impact knocked the breath out of him. He swung his elbow back hard, connecting with the attacker's helmet. The hunter staggered, but didn't go down. Lyria spun toward Ethan, her blade a blur. She struck the attacker's leg, forcing him to drop to one knee. "Move!" she shouted, grabbing Ethan's arm. They ran deeper into the station, weaving through maintenance corridors. Behind them, the hunters regrouped, their footsteps echoing in pursuit. Ethan knew they couldn't just keep running. These hunters wouldn't stop. "Tell me you have a plan," he said, breathless. "I do," she replied, eyes scanning the ceiling as they moved. Her gaze locked on a cluster of thick cables running overhead. "Shoot that," she said, pointing. Ethan didn't hesitate. One quick blast and the cable snapped free. Sparks showered the corridor, and heavy conduits crashed to the floor between them and the pursuing hunters. It bought them seconds, but seconds were enough. They burst into a larger chamber, a cargo loading bay filled with crates and grav lifts. The air was warmer here, the hum of generators loud in their ears. "This way," Lyria said, leading him toward a half-open hatch at the far end. Just as they reached it, a blaster bolt caught Ethan in the side. He staggered, gritting his teeth against the pain. Lyria turned, her eyes blazing, not with fear, but fury. She moved faster than he'd seen before, her blade finding the space between a hunter's armor plates. The attacker dropped, and she caught Ethan before he could fall. "Stay with me," she said, her voice low but fierce. She half-carried him through the hatch, sealing it behind them. Only then did Ethan realize her hands were shaking, not from weakness, but from the thought of losing him. He met her gaze. "I guess we're even now," he said with a weak smile. Her jaw tightened. "No," she said. "This was not about debt. I protect what is mine." Outside, the muffled thud of hunters pounding on the sealed hatch echoed through the metal walls. It was only a matter of time before they broke through, and Ethan knew getting out of Port Helver alive was going to take more than running, the choice. The pounding on the hatch grew louder. Each strike rattled the walls of the narrow service corridor. Ethan leaned against the metal bulkhead, one hand pressed to the burn on his side. Lyria crouched in front of him, scanning the injury with a small handheld device. "It's not deep," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes moved fast. They used a low-energy setting meant to disable, not kill. "Yeah," Ethan muttered, "so they can drag." U.S. back breathing. Before she could answer, the corridor's intercom crackled to life. A voice smooth, confident filled the space. It wasn't one of the bounty hunters. "This was someone higher up, Ethan Cross," the voice said. "You don't know me, but I know you. I know the debt you owe to the Black Horizon Syndicate. I know about the smuggling runs through Orion Gate and the cargo that went missing. We could erase all of that." Today, Ethan's jaw clenched. He had spent years keeping his past buried. Now it was being dragged into the open. The voice continued. "All you have to do is open that hatch and hand over the Illyrian woman. Walk away free. No charges. Number. Debts. No one hunting you again." Lyria froze, still holding the scanner. She didn't look at him right away. When she finally did, her expression was unreadable. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. "About your debts?" Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence was enough. The voice on the intercom grew softer, almost friendly. "You barely know her, Cross. She's trouble. She will bring every enemy she has into your life, and you've been running long enough. It's time to stop." The pounding on the hatch had stopped. Now it was just the voice and the slow thump of Ethan's heartbeat in his ears. "You can take the deal," Lyria said, her voice calm. "You would be free. You could go wherever you want. Never see me again." Ethan met her gaze. "You think I'd do that?" "I think you've done things to survive," she said. Her tone wasn't accusing. It was matter of fact, and survival makes people choose themselves first. Ethan looked down. She wasn't wrong. He had walked away from people before. He had left others to deal with the fallout of his mistakes. It was how he had stayed alive. The intercom hissed again. "You have 1 minute, Cross. Choose wisely." Ethan's eyes stayed on Lyria. Her posture was still, but he could see the tension in her hands, the faint tremor of someone ready to fight, even knowing she might lose. "I should take the deal," Ethan said at last. Lyria didn't flinch. "Yes," she replied. "You should." The voice on the intercom cut in. 30 seconds. Ethan pushed himself to his feet, ignoring the sharp pain in his side. Lyria stepped back slightly, her eyes narrowing. He reached for the hatch control, then stopped. His hand hovered there for a long moment. Then he pulled it away. "Tell your boss," Ethan said toward the intercom, his voice cold. "If they want her, they'll have to go through me." There was a pause. Then the voice chuckled, low and dangerous. "So be it." The hatch exploded inward. Metal shards sprang across the corridor. Bounty hunters stormed through, weapons ready. Ethan grabbed his blaster. Lyria's blade flashed in the dim light. Side by side, they charged into the fight, not as strangers, but as something closer to partners. A bond beyond lawblaster fire lit the narrow corridor in bursts of blue and red. The air filled with the sharp smell of burning metal and the ringing echo of each shot. Ethan fired low. Forcing the first bounty hunter to stumble, Lyria darted Forward, her blade finding the gap in his armor before he could recover. More came, their heavy boots thudding against the deck. One swung the butt of his rifle at Ethan's head. Ethan ducked and slammed his shoulder into the attacker's chest, sending him crashing into the wall. Left. Lyria shouted. Ethan spun, firing twice, one bolt hitting a hunter's weapon, the other striking the control panel behind him. Sparks rained down as the panel shorted, sealing a blast door between them and half the attackers. This way. Lyria grabbed his arm and pulled him down another corridor. They burst into a maintenance hangar, its huge bay doors sealed tight. Rows of old service craft sat in the dim light, small, fast, and mostly forgotten. That one, Ethan said, pointing to a compact shuttle with engine ports big enough for a racing skiff. He limped toward it, Lyria at his side. The sound of boots pounding metal echoed behind them. The hunters were coming fast. Ethan slid into the pilot's seat and started the ignition. The engines coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. Lyria jumped into the co-pilot's chair, her fingers flying over the controls. She rerouted power from the shields to the engines. "If they catch us in the hangar, we're dead," she said. "Then we don't let them catch us," Ethan replied. The bay doors groaned open, and cold space spilled into the hangar. Through the widening gap, Ethan could see the warship outside, looming like a dark mountain against the stars. Its cannons were already turning toward them. "Hang on," he shouted. The shuttle shot forward, skimming the hangar floor before leaping into open space. Bolts of plasma streaked past, one close enough to make the hull glow. Lyria locked eyes on a cluster of drifting debris ahead. "Go through there," she said. "It'll rip the ship apart," Ethan argued. "Not if you trust me," she countered. Without another word, Ethan angled the shuttle toward the debris field. They weaved between spinning chunks of rock and twisted metal. The warship's cannons kept firing, but the shots grew wilder, too dangerous for them to aim carefully. Finally, the warship broke off, its massive frame unable to follow through the narrow gaps. Only silence filled the shuttle now, broken by the soft hum of the engines. They had escaped. Ethan let out a long breath and leaned back in the seat. "Not bad for a first day as your husband," he said. Lyria's lips curved into a faint smile. "In my world, there is no annulment," she reminded him. "You are bound to me by law, by honor, and now by choice." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. He had started this day alone, just another scavenger drifting between jobs. Now he was bound to a princess, hunted by an empire, and heading toward dangers he couldn't even name. And somehow he didn't mind. "Then I guess we make it work," he said. Her smile deepened, just slightly. "Then we make it work," she echoed. The shuttle slipped into the black, the stars stretching before them. But far behind, on the warship's bridge, a shadowed figure watched their escape on a holoscreen. "They think they've won," the figure said quietly. "Let them run. We will find them. And when we do, they will kneel." The holo faded to black, and in the endless dark ahead, Ethan and Lyria's journey had only just begun.